What's up, my peeps? For those of you who may not know, uh, my channel doesn't get any views. So if it gains traction, it's probably because of this. There's been a lot of talk about um, with the stuff going on with the FDA, and the FDA saying, let's see. Okay, so that's a little different too. So when we got the news about Unicure and us being enrolled in enroll HD, which is like a research study. We go like every year in November. We go to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. Anyway, a lot of that data was used for this, and that they said that data was insufficient, and that can be um, argued as well. But now data from Unicure in London, and I pretty sure we've been doing this too in America. Um, with London, that's what I was told. But for sure, I say London. I think it's London, but Unicure, they came out with this treatment and they had data. So like around in different studies, like around 27 people in one study. And I used to know like a little more about this, but I kind of moved past it. Um, Total of 30 across different knowledge. This includes 26 patients in the U.S. study, 13 in the European study, and additional cohorts. Data often highlights 29 patients who received the gene therapy. And yeah, so out of 29, like a 75%, it slowed the disease by 75%. Like sham trials, just for like the placebo effect for pain and depression, right? Okay. For fatal diseases. Yeah, okay, word, okay. So I thought I was being silly. Responses can, well, and subjective. Yeah, and while it says it can't help with like subjective symptoms, there it says in many cancer studies, the placebo has a minimal, if any, effect on objective tumor shrinkage, which is not too far off from Huntington's. And I will say this: the FDA before had like an agreement with Unicure. Um, I don't know what the fuck changed, but I think it is very silly just to go into like full like sham um like sham trials when people want to do this. My sister said and she's seen people go through this disease, and she said I would rather die from the treatment than die from the disease. And that's not a naive thing to say. And it would be naive for someone to think it's naive who knows less about the disease. You know, uh, I believe so. Maybe they know like some dangers that we don't. Brain surgery's come a long way. Like these are neurosurgeons doing this. Like we don't like this shit either. We don't. But and I did do a video, where I showed me like fucking like crying, and really, talking about it. But this just isn't that kind of video, and I'm really trying to put into words my confusion. Cause I've seen the data. I can't pull the data up for you. Maybe I can. Um, I have a full like fucking video of like a 2 hour and 30 like meeting, on my YouTube too, and I might go through some of that, and look at some of that. The official rejected Unicure's concerns about ethics. How many people in the AMT 130 trial didn't get treatment but had Huntington's? And some later crossed over to receive treatment. 4 more who crossed over. After 3 years, The high-dose treatment group showed a 75 slower disease progression compared to this control group. It's sad they gotta do that. I forgot they did that too. Like 6 people didn't get it. In this phase. And yeah, and I, they made like fucking graphs. Like I haven't seen like fucking the number. I haven't put the data into graphs, but I read the graphs, and I'm pretty sure there are graphs in like the recording that I have. They would need to anesthetize the patient, put 1 to 3 nicks in the scalp. AMT-130 is a gene, a rare fatal neurodegenerative disease. Pivotal phase update showing that the candidate compared with external controls. One guy went back to work. At least one participant in the AMT-130 phase clinical trial who had previously retired due to Huntington's was able to return to work. Patients maintain their ability to work, think, and perform daily function. The results are based on a small group, and while promising, they are not yet fully confirmed in a larger population. And that's the big thing. And I see myself stumbling on a couple things and being like, okay, I get that. But I don't know. I feel like at this point you just want to give the fucking treatment, It's weird saying this because to me it's not complicated. You have a fatal disease, and we're maybe one of the luckier ones. There's a lot of people trying to fast track this to save time for people who are just barely on that cusp, but having a chance where they got a low enough CAD count or they're young enough with maybe a high one. Calls uniQure's gene therapy a failed treatment. See, and that's the thing though, is that with that data, that's why people think it's like a weird attack and has something to do with money and stocks, because you can't just straight up call that a failed treatment, because from the data that they have gathered, I mean, that's the number you have. Whether it's not enough people for the study or not, because that's like opposite of fail. That's extreme potential. They likely acknowledge or understand at some deep level that their trial failed years ago, and instead of doing the right thing and running the correct clinical study, they're performing a distorted or manipulated comparison in the mind of FDA. Is that they had placebos in their study, including some where companies have accused it of going back on previous guidance, which is exactly what the fuck the FDA did to uniQure.
Joining us right now is FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary. And Commissioner, thank you for being with us today.
And when you take care of these people and you break bad news and you say, hey, there's nothing out there that we know of that can be used as a therapeutic, it has an impact on your soul and your thinking. If there's a mechanism that makes sense, we waive all the clinical trial requirements and we say, if this is safe and looks like it works for an ultra-rare disease, we're going to go ahead and green light that therapy.
But there are concerns about slightly less rare diseases and some of the things that have been happening there. This was laid out yesterday in a Wall Street Journal opinion piece or editorial, where they raised questions about what you are doing, which looks like it's great for rare disease. But then at the same time, Dr. Vinay Prasad at the FDA has been quietly, they say, undermining the program by, turning down with a CRL, a complete review letter that turns down some of the things for these companies that are working on rare diseases where they had been following the advice of the FDA from earlier, and it looks like they're changing the rules of the game later. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, Becky, there's always going to be two sides to a story. Imagine in a theoretical, I know this has never happened to you, but if you have a dispute with your spouse and you go to a captive audience, you're always going to give one side of the story. And so we decided at the FDA that if we reject a drug, the public deserves to know why. So for the first time in history, our letters detail.
Okay, well, but the thing is, no, we don't know why. You just say committed to the safety, and if the data contradicts that.
Detailing why a drug has not been accepted, detailing that we gave guidance that was not followed, detailing why the clinical trial showed no benefit. That is now public information in real time. So I think there has been a bit of an effort to find a boogeyman to account for certain products that were not approved. For example, there was a product.
Who's the boogeyman? Like, you would have to tell me who that boogeyman is. Because if the boogeyman isn't you, then we have to find the boogeyman. So Unicure's like lying, right? About not fast tracking it, right? So let's see why you're not doing that with the promising data that they have, right? And 30 years of Enroll HD data on top of the AMT data as well. So I think he's going to tell us that.
Where the researchers drilled a burr hole, literally a hole in people's skulls to inject intrathecally into the ventricle. A therapy, the randomized controlled trial at the end of the randomization period has found no benefit, and yet this is one of the... And
where the fuck did he get that data? No, for real. Because all right, not any person involved in the trial, right? Any analyst who's looked at the trial can ask what the fuck he's talking about. Are they lying? Are they making up data? Like, then help me understand, Mr. Man. Help me understand why the data that I've been told by people in Europe and people in America is completely wrong.
I have a lot of sympathy for those patients. There's nothing out there to offer them, but we're not going to go ahead and approve something like that has morbidity associated with it if the clinical trial was stone cold normal.
What the fuck do you... I just don't understand how you can get a 75% number and then it turning out to be actually indeed stone cold? No benefit? Just don't believe it.
To put a fatwa on Vinay Prasad by one or two media outlets as if he's the one who's making these decisions. One of them was not even in his center cited in that article.
Doctor, what's he doing in the Trump administration in the first place? He couldn't be confirmed by the Senate, most likely, because he's such an ardent supporter of Bernie Sanders.
And in that article.
Where did we go? I'm sorry.
So what is the upside or what do you see in him to leave him in the position to head up your biologics unit?
Well, Joe, that's part of the smear campaign. I'm picking the best scientist. Vinay Prasad loves President Trump. He did support Bernie Sanders in the past, but he saw the incredible revolution with President Trump and is an ardent supporter of President Trump. Just listen to his podcast.
Scientist for this, Doctor?
If you listen to his podcast for the last 4 years, you'll see that he has been an ardent supporter of everything President Trump has done and is trying to do. We pick people based on the best.
Why do we give a fuck about that? We're talking about him being like qualified to do that, and we're talking about whether he likes Bernie Sanders more or fucking Trump more.
The system works. If your drug works, it's going to get approved. And if not, the public deserves to know why we're putting those decisions out there. And
no, you didn't know why. Like, okay, because nobody has grabbed the data that was shown to me. Nobody has grabbed the promising data that was shown to me and say, this shit is fucking wrong and here's why. Data from the AMT studies, particularly evaluated by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, did not definitively prove no benefit, but rather failed to meet the regulatory standard of evidence required to demonstrate effectiveness. Okay, and that motherfucker just straight up said no benefit. Now, and he didn't say Huntington's, but, so what else we got? Sure sounds like motherfucking that one, bro. Yeah, the company argued that early Huntington's is virtually impossible to show a clinical benefit in just 1 year because control patients did not worsen significantly. The FDA, however, pointed to the lack of difference at 12 months in the randomized cohort as evidence against the claimed benefit. Important to note, while the FDA deemed the evidence insufficient for the approval, the data did show... Thanks, AI. Long-term trends, including a 75% slowing of progression at 3 years and reduced neurofilament light levels, which indicate a potential slowing of neurodegeneration. It is that time is running out. A lot of people And I don't know, if time runs out for us, like, people in my family had it, and I'm just fucking angry. And it makes me angry, and this makes me angry. A lot of it makes me angry.
And of course, you may have seen that we have announced we're going from a requirement of 2 clinical trials down to 1.
Everybody kind of gets a little more leeway now, except Unicure with that treatment. It's not that I fucking like burr holes either, you know? Like, I don't, just, you know, my little sister and shit, but I mean, in that trial is, if that was 3 years, how many more years? You know, like, that's the thing. How many more years will it take? And how many more years do we have? It's not like this is a cure. It's still a treatment.
One point that the journal made about Dr. Prasad, and this is what he's written about in the past. This is what he has certainly been vocal about. They say he seems to believe the cost for drugs that receive accelerated approval exceed their benefits, and that nothing short of a large double-blind randomized controlled trials should be sufficient to prove a medicine's efficacy. I mean, you and I have talked about this before. The idea that in rare disease, it's really difficult to do a large double-blind randomized control trial. First of all, you don't have enough patients who you can find to do this. And secondly, most institutions won't do these things, particularly if it's for a life-threatening disease, because it's unethical to insist on a blind trial where some people get a placebo if the end result is they die without it.
Yes.
Do you agree with that theory? Do you think that there should be double-blind randomized trials for rare diseases that have life-threatening consequences?
Look, no, we don't. And Dr. Prasad really has never championed that idea. So that's part of a smear campaign. Again, we've seen...
It's not, though. It's not, though. It just isn't. Like, this isn't a smear camp where... That's insane. She just said, are you doubling down on what you just said? And he said, no. Just contradicting myself here. Like, it's not a smear campaign. Literally are talking about, you know, like, people not getting the treatment and getting the placebo when they're systematic for Huntington's disease. And yeah, like, they die without it. I mean, that's what happens because it can't not happen. Because if it couldn't happen, I wouldn't be fucked. Like, it's so simple. That's the thing, though. Like, smear campaigns and, like the fucking politics, and them talking about, like, fucking Bernie Sanders and fucking Donald Trump. No, like, this isn't a fucking smear campaign. We're the people complaining. Like, are you guys, like, is anybody under the fucking impression that it's some, like, fucking political boogeyman who's doing this smear for the... No, it's us. It's us. It's the Huntington's disease community. It's not like... I just said the same thing 6 times, but it's like, when somebody blatantly fucking contradicts themselves, the only thing I can seem to do is...
A fatwa put on him by 1 or 2 media outlets and investors...
It's not just, Marty, it's not just 1 or 2 media outlets. It's investors who I've spoken with. It is companies who I've spoken with. This is the most common complaint I get from anybody I talk to in the industry. It's from researchers.
Yeah, so look, if a clinical trial shows no benefit in a randomized trial, then it's not going to get approved. But we have a record number of approvals under Dr. Prasad. He authored the plausible mechanism pathway to... We do not believe that you have to use a randomized control trial model for all rare diseases. We believe... So the system is very clear.
To dispute claims linking vaccines with autism, and she said, well, we don't really know, and there's been so many studies that, I mean, obviously we don't know.
This is about the money. It's about them making money off of us. They see this adding time, cost, and execution risk. And how come a worst case regular scenario? Okay. So they were like, that's the fucking worst case scenario, but they still express confidence in the data. Okay, Chardon. Deadass investing like agency. Okay. I mean, I'm not a representative of anybody, by the way. I don't represent any nonprofit. I don't. work with them, but I do not represent. Seeks to represent purchasers or acquirers of Unicure or near shares. No fucking way. Damn, so you're filing a lawsuit against them because the FDA fucked them. Yeah, the FDA currently no longer agreed. Yeah, that was like a surprise to everyone, I thought. So, alright, Unicure surges following departure. Despite a US FDA criticizing Unicure on March 5th for the way it conducted a study, the stock is surging 36%. That official, in a call with reporters, accused Unicure of performing a disoriented or manipulated comparison in its phase half trial. Unicure's fortune likely changed for the better due to the announcement on March 6th that Vinay Prasad, okay, the guy they were talking about, director of the FDA Center for Biological Evaluation, will be departing the agency in April, and he oversaw the agency's handling of the FDA. Turbulent tenure. For second time. Public fights. So this dude is just the fucking bad boy of fucking Big Pharma? Is that what the fuck this is? In less than a year that he's departed after controversial decision. Stop bringing him in! Leave that motherfucker on his podcast. Let this man podcast. Let him do what he needs to do.
2015 also saw the publication of his first book, Ending Medical Reversal. Ending Medical Reversal discussed cases where a common and widely accepted medical practice was later found to be ineffective or even harmful once better quality evidence was obtained.
Okay, so that's where his fucking head's at.
Thus began Prasad's famous quest of demanding higher quality evidence for pretty much everything, becoming so dogmatic in his application of evidence-based medicine that anything short of a large, double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial with perfect randomization and follow-up was insufficient to satisfy him, irrespective of the intervention being studied. And he would use his disdain for reliance on lesser evidence to harshly criticize the pharmaceutical industry, scientists, and other physicians, professional societies, the NIH, FDA, and CDC. In the memorable words of frequent Prasad critic David Gorski, Prasad weaponized EBM fundamentalist methodology. As readers know, my philosophy is RCT or shut the f*** up. That language mirrors what he's been using for years.
That sounds nice when you say it, but then there's situations where like we need to get going on treatment that seems very promising. And yeah, for rare diseases, it is very difficult to get those very large, randomized, perfect control studies. So it feels like he's trying to attack, like Big Pharma. But motherfucker, I can't have you attacking Unicure when they're trying to make like a treatment for the thing that like we all as a community very much want, and it's never had it, and there's not a lot of time for like really large fucking played out research studies. There's just not. Okay, we're ready to fucking go. People are dying. I don't like Big Pharma either, and I don't like the fact that it's going to cost a lot. That's my thing with it. That doesn't mean that I just simply don't want to not get it.
Prasad thought himself too smart to waste time on science communication to the general public, which was ironic in retrospect since his rise to broader fame and infamy came from communicating directly to the public during COVID, after which he was ostracized by most of his supposed intellectual peers. But more importantly, this is when the contrarians of academic medicine entered their, quote, golden age, enabled by public fear and distrust of all things concerning the pandemic. The contrarians discovered this huge undeveloped market for medical mistrust, and they used social media to exploit it, initially just for hits of dopamine, but later for wider fame, conventional media attention, and for some like Prasad, money. In one particularly infamous Substack post from October 2021, Prasad discussed how the normalization of government-mandated restrictions on our lives during the pandemic was analogous to the rise of fascism in 1930s Germany. His argument, it had more nuance to this, but some saw this as Prasad comparing mask and vaccine mandates to the literal Holocaust. And the more skepticism he posted on Twitter, the more the skeptics flocked to him. The dopamine which accompanied the follows, likes, and retweets reinforced his contrarian views, making them less susceptible to counter-argument from his academic and medical peers. And that counter-argument against him specifically became very dramatic. I don't know of any medical professional on Twitter during the pandemic who generated the degree of pushback and outright animosity from the mainstream medical community. In response, Prasad's online persona became increasingly abrasive. Last week, in an obituary of sorts for his short-lived FDA career, Prasad's friend Adam Sifu had this to say about him. Quote, "I do understand that Dr. Prasad is, well, divisive. He has strong opinions, and he is not shy about sharing them. He has at times been brash, nasty, and insulting. Being opinionated and insensitive guarantees enemies, and he made them in spades." And that's his friend talking. Here's a clip of him on ZDogg MD's podcast, where he's asked if it's time to reconcile with former professional and social media adversaries on questions about COVID restrictions and vaccines.
Now, what do you think should be done, Vinay? Because there's two camps on this. Like, let's forgive and have a reconciliation about all this and move on and forget it. Why are we beating this dead horse? And others who say, but if we do that, when the next, Marburg pandemic or whatever comes, or bird flu, the same shit's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't believe in forgiveness because, in my opinion, these pieces of shit are still lying. I mean, like, if you want forgiveness, the first thing you have to say is what you actually did wrong. And they're still fucking lying. Well, based on the best information we had at the time, cloth masking 2-year-olds was a sensible. No, it wasn't, you fucking liar. I knew it wasn't. You have to be dropped on your head to think that. You're lying, dude. And just say, okay, fine, I was scared. I wanted to go to my sex party. I thought if the 2-year-old masked up, I'd go have more parties. Just say you were lying. Just say you made shit up.
Precise treatment, but the idea of it, and I guess it really just is morbid, but so's the disease. People want to be jumping on the treatment. If the disease wasn't more morbid than the treatment was, at least double fold. So that's a point I want to not immediately. I don't know how long this video is now. I've been watching this guy for 20 minutes, I think, but like that's definitely a point I would like to make.
Prior administrations would bring individuals together into HHS based on specific expertise and reputation, rather than firsthand knowledge of them as people or personalities. And many positions below the cabinet level would span multiple administrations. There was not this effort to replace the entire leadership within the American healthcare system all in one swoop, as what's happened over the last 6 months. But with Trump and Maha, pretty much everyone got replaced at the same time, and most of them all knew each other already. To better understand these relationships and the contrarian to federal employee pipeline, I've attempted to diagram this all out, focusing on prominent academic physicians and scientists who espoused positions on COVID or on medicine more generally that were, let's say, outside the mainstream. This is the ecosystem that amplified Prasad, the ecosystem that dialed Prasad up to 11. These are his people. Most notably, this includes Sifu and a cardiologist from Kentucky, John Mandrola. In 2022, these three founded something called Sensible Medicine, which was initially described as a newsletter, but then developed into a podcast and website with branding and even merch. They described their site as follows. Quote, "The goal of Sensible Medicine is to showcase a range of ideas and opinions about all things biomedicine. We feature contrasting ideas and opinions. The editors themselves will disagree with each other in and about posts. Once upon a time, that was how progress occurred, through dialogue. We work to nurture a home for this type of engagement."
See, that's what I think, like, and it might just be me, but the way that's worded seems like that's not worded by somebody who wants to get to the willy-nilly, like, just somebody who likes to debate. like somebody who likes to argue, and I don't know why that guy strikes me as him. And maybe I'm coming at it from like a place of frustration.
There have been a handful of episodes with Prasad and McCary on together. Watching these episodes, you can see that they are very friendly with one another. Clearly, they get along well, and they're in.
See, that's what that was that guy. You know, like that was that guy. They were just like, so he was just and then he was like covering his ass, you know.
And is an ardent supporter of President Trump. Just
But he's
listen
the
to his
best scientist
podcast.
for this,
Well,
doctor?
if you listen to his podcast,
So with the smear campaign, how I lost my shit, you know. Because no, it's not a smear campaign. We're saying what the fuck, and you're saying whoa, stop yelling at my buddy. You know, like smear campaign. No, we're saying go with the data that they fucking have. This is a rare disease. It's not really that easy to get data from it, and to get placebos from it, it's actually really fucking heartbreaking. And I have trouble saying that I'm okay with even having people get placebos just to die from Huntington's. So,
Watching these episodes, you can see that they are very friendly with one another. That pre-existing relationship between Prasad and McCary was almost certainly a large factor in Prasad's appointment in May 2025 as the director of CBER. I'm sure it also didn't hurt that Prasad's skepticism about the COVID vaccine and his criticisms of the pharmaceutical industry superficially aligned with RFK Jr.'s pet issues. And it also didn't hurt that Prasad's public statements on politics seem to have taken a rightward swing following the 2024 election, including a Substack post in December 2024 that made the bizarre argument that confirming infamous anti-vaxxer RFK Jr. as HH Secretary
also, did I even see data from?
would actually
Was there sufficient large-scale data for Tylenol causing autism like RFK talked about? Okay. Oh, okay. So Prasad only throws promising data into the trash. Noted. That it all makes sense now. Okay, so this man, so they're buddy with somebody like, because I remember, I don't even know what other stuff he talked about. I just remember them saying that, and like saying that at press conferences with no data, not a graph. Like, was there a graph like in the press conference that when they were talking about it? So we have these here. So that's gonna tell me that that they are gonna show us data. Okay. All right. What is that? What is that? Where did that go? Where did that go? Why did you take it away?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. And it's not that everything's 100% understood or known, that people were very understanding of where we were, but it's turning out that we understood a lot more than a lot of people who studied it, we think.
What does that mean? Did you study it? Maybe he did. Maybe he did understand autism more than people who studied it. I don't know what he studied. A link between vaccines and autism. He stated, my theory, and I study it because I have young children. My theory is the shots. We're giving these massive injections at one time, and I really think it does something to our children. When do like symptoms of autism usually show up? This motherfucker, bro. I was gonna say, what are you talking about? Like, motherfuckers becoming autistic at like fucking 6 years old or some shit? Like, I'm sorry, I had to make sure that he didn't know what he was talking about because I don't want to be wrong either.
Able to build.
There's no data. I don't need a press conference of them talking. And it's ironic because you think the press conference of them talking would have the data.
I also, and we've already done this, we want no mercury in the vaccine. We want no aluminum in the vaccine. The MMR, I think, should be taken separately. This is based on what I feel the mumps, measles, and all the three should be taken separately. And it seems to be that when you mix them, there could be a problem. So there's no downside in taking them separately. In fact, they think it's better, so let it be separate.
That was actually a little interesting. 1943, because autism wasn't discovered in 1911. It was a word used to describe people who were suffering from schizophrenia. Unless they were confusing schizophrenia with autism. It was Tylenol. 10 years after. Okay.
Chicken pox is already separate because when that got mixed in, I guess they made it four for a while, it really was bad. So they make chicken pox. Individually, they're okay. When you mix them, something maybe happens.
That's what I'm saying. See, the thing that makes me so mad is that they got like their little thing going on with make medicine great. What did they say? Fucking make something, and they just immediately shut down Unicure, right? With really promising data. They held a fucking White House conference with fucking, like, there's not sufficient large-scale data to support the claim that, and that is something that you can have a large, you can. It's not a fucking, is autism rare? No, it's fucking not, dude. So yeah, you fucking can. And the thing is that they fucking did it. Yet they held a fucking press conference in the fucking White House. But they're gonna say that Unicure's data has no benefit. Bitch, I saw the data. So either Unicure made up the fucking data, or they didn't, you know? And it goes back to this. It goes back to the fucking the lawsuit. When the lawsuit is really just the FDA not going back to their agreement. And I believe they did have the agreement. And I believe the only reason that agreement was not agreed was because of fucking Prasad.
But we don't know that acetaminophen causes autism. And when we look at well-controlled studies that look at genetics and environmental factors, that association goes away.
Exposure to altered brain development.
I'm done. Like I'm done.
I believe that claims Prasad is literally an anti-vaxxer are false. The outcome might still align with the goals of anti-vaxxers if Prasad insisted on impractical levels of evidence for specific vaccines in specific situations, which is consistent with his MO. Industry, however, seemed more concerned about his take on the other therapies under his purview. Therapies that impact far, far fewer people, but which are far, far more expensive and thus lucrative. Prasad has been a longtime critic of the pharmaceutical industry, and it was expected that his appointment would bring a level of scientific rigor that would otherwise be absent from Make America Healthy Again. And with scientific rigor would naturally follow increased regulation. As just one declined.
And this post was 7 months ago.
Very sharply at the moment Prasad's appointment was announced. First, for all Prasad's bluster and previous criticism of the FDA, he didn't seem to actually want to do most of the job. As reported by Stat in June, multiple agency employees who requested anonymity to protect against retaliation told Stat that Prasad seemed uninterested in the administrative work of being a center director. One CBER agency official said, Prasad rarely attends center meetings with office directors, and that their questions about the budget, HR functions, and IT systems have gone unanswered. Just as it was much easier for Prasad to criticize clinical trials than it would be for him to run one himself, it proved much easier for him to criticize a government agency than helping to run one. Yet, if those were the only problems, Prasad would still be CBER director. After all, most of the people brought to the federal government by Trump seem uninterested in the hard work of actually doing their jobs and are disliked by the career officials who are now their subordinates. So Prasad would have, sort of fit right in with that group. No, so Prasad's downfall was over something much bigger than his personal shortcomings.
Well, so why is he aligning with people's goals that have no data but not others who have data? Like,
biotech companies end up bankrupt because the safety or efficacy of their products failed to meet Prasad's standards, I think he might see that as a victory, not a cause for concern or pause.
Once again, you held a prep conference for something that, like, wasn't backed up by the data. I mean, that was a fucking national press conference. But you won't even fast track treatment that shows promising data. I mean, that's beyond insane. It's beyond insane. It's baffling. And actually, the whole fucking reason I'm trying to do this video is to figure it out, to prove myself wrong, to say, hey, maybe I'm the crazy one. But the more and more I get into making this video, the less I feel that way.
So conflict was inevitably going to be triggered by this tension between Prasad's extreme and dogmatic application of evidence-based medicine on one hand, and the Trump administration's desire to eliminate regulation to help industry make more money on the other.
Here we go. I like this art. Okay. Yes, with any surgery, there is a risk, but most people in the Huntington's disease community who would qualify for their surgery have said that they would accept the risk if it means they could have a 75% of their life back. That is a huge number. I, along with so many people, are frustrated that the FDA is not listening to us. They're not listening to patient voices. Once again, it's not a smear campaign. FDA is not listening to us. They're not listening to patient voices. Your Vice President, Senior Equity Analyst, specializing in U.S. healthcare, said the sham surgery requirement would not only slow down the development of AMT 130. We believe such a study would be challenging to execute and be potentially unethical. Okay, and you can say, sure, the Enroll HD data is disoriented because it's like surveys. But how are you going to take the levels, like the NFL or whatever the levels are, that show how much of the protein is in your fucking brain? How do you explain those levels going down from the treatment? I mean, how the fuck do you explain that? It's like the bigger it gets, the faster it eats, but it slows down when given treatment? I mean, fuck me. I'm not a scientist, but goddamn. The stock had been underpriced after the Monday-Tuesday sell-off, and investors responded by buying the dip, and some investors speculate that uniQure would seek a smoother path to AMT 130 approvals outside the United States, namely through more clinical studies in Europe or the UK, which is probably what may end up happening. I mean, we might end up having just to go to the UK for this shit. And then, yeah, Prasad's recognition. Matter of when, not if. Yeah, Makari praised Masald.
Let me tell you about my best friend.
The recent statements made by fucking Prasad to the press have been highly irregular, unprecedented, and are incomplete or entirely incorrect. We do not believe they reflect a fair and faithful reading of the documents we have submitted or those we have received from the agency. uniQure is ready to move forward. We welcome renewed direct conversation in the interest of restoring and preserving the integrity of the review process and bettering the lives of patients. And we're all behind uniQure. Issued a statement urging FDA to show regulatory flexibility in evaluating rare disease treatments and defending placebo-controlled trials as gold standard science while acknowledging the heavy weight borne by patients in placebo trial arms. For our families, a 2-year sham-controlled period is not a neutral observation window. It is a period of active, irreversible neurodegeneration. Every month spent in a placebo sham arm represents a loss of neurons that no future treatment can restore. Thank you, because I can't say that myself for some reason. By the time a sham group participant may eventually receive the therapy, they may have progressed past the therapeutic window where a treatment could have best preserved their quality of life. Amy Gray, president and CEO of HDSA, told the Patient News website, Being Patient, which is the website, that the organization just wants the FDA to honor their previous guidance. So you can't fucking, like, we all know that we had previous guidance. I mean, the FDA is fucking lying. Now that Prasad's gone, we just gotta see if the FDA really does double down on that shit, or if they decide to listen to the Huntington's community.
And in the middle of this was RFK Jr.'s contradictory stances that he doesn't trust Big Pharma and thinks extremely well-tested vaccines are dangerous, while he also supports the right to try philosophy in which the public gains easier access to experimental therapies about which the FDA has historically and understandably been very cautious. Of course, Prasad, Trump, and RFK Jr. will be aligned on virtually nothing aside from the mRNA-based COVID vaccines on which they all expressed skepticism. The first concerned a new so-called orphan drug called Elevidys. Orphan drugs are medications that treat rare diseases that are generally not given much attention by conventional pharmaceutical companies due to limited market potential. They are often developed by smaller companies and are fantastically expensive. Elevidys is recombinant gene therapy to treat a disease called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. This is a relatively rare genetic disease, almost solely affecting boys, with an age of onset around 4 and leading to death at an average age of 30. Elevidys was developed by a company called Sarepta Therapeutics and was approved by the FDA for use in the US in 2023. A course of treatment, which is a single one-time intravenous infusion, cost $3.2 million.
Which is how we kind of got the expectation of the number for AMT 130.
Making it one of the most expensive medications in history. Sarepta and Elevidys had already run into trouble before Prasad had been appointed. There had been a case of fatal liver failure associated with the medication announced in March. As investors grew concerned, Sarepta's stock price started tumbling from $101 on March 17th, the day before the first fatality was announced, down to $64 on May 5th, the day prior to the announcement of Prasad's appointment. Then in June, a second fatality associated with Elevidys was announced. And in July, a third fatality, not from Elevidys specifically, but from a different investigational drug developed by Sarepta, which had significant similarities. Following this, Prasad requested that Sarepta Therapeutics voluntarily suspend distribution of Elevidys and pause clinical trials on other gene therapies. Sarepta initially refused to voluntarily withdraw Elevidys. After all, it's a $3 million per patient drug. Even though Duchenne muscular dystrophy is rare, even with just several hundred cases born in the US per year, that's a potential market in the rough ballpark of $1 billion per year. $1 billion a year that could be jeopardized by Vinay Prasad's adherence to, quote,
It's funny, and how they argue this. They're arguing this with money. My mind goes to, well, how many more lives is it saving? And it's tough stuff.
And the day Prasad left CBER, the FDA lifted their hold on Elevidys. Laura Loomer, a notorious right-wing extremist provocateur, conspiracy theorist, proud self-proclaimed anti-Islamic white nationalist, and Trump confidant. Around the same time as the Elevidys shitstorm hit, she began attacking Prasad seemingly out of nowhere. Why Loomer, someone very far outside the healthcare sphere, would even know who Prasad was is a little mysterious, unless one is more conspiracy-minded and sees this not so much as mysterious as it is suspicious. Prasad was, quote, sabotaging Trump's deregulatory agenda. What she's getting at here is the right to try movement. This idea is born from a coalescence of interests from patient advocate groups, biotech executives, and libertarian and conservative politicians. The gist is that severely or terminally ill patients who have either not responded to conventional treatments or for whom no conventional treatments exist should be given the opportunity to use unproven experimental therapies that have not been FDA approved.
Yeah.
These therapies can easily be more harmful than beneficial, but as the argument goes, patients should be allowed to make an informed decision, weighing the risks and benefits on their own.
The point I just made, yeah.
The right to try movement is controversial and full of ethical quandaries. I'm not going to debate here which side is morally superior because it is honestly not clear. But Prasad, with his pro-regulation, high level of evidence approach to drug approvals, he clearly falls more into the camp of right to try is a bad idea. This is the additional thing that Loomer is referring to.
And that's why we really disagree. I disagree with Lara Loomer on a great many deal of things. Funny enough.
Again, why does Loomer even know who Prasad is? You need to wonder if someone pointed her gaze in his direction, and it doesn't take much imagination to come up with a list of suspects, both of which focused less on his politics and more on his approach to drug regulation and the fact that he's anti-right to try. And those are the three issues that came all together all once.
And that's the only thing I care about. That is the only thing I care about. Anti-right to try. That's what I disagree with. I feel like it's really tough to say you're against something that doesn't have a lot to do with you. So yeah, that's my problem with Prasad, is anti-right to try. And that's really like the basis of this whole video, is that I do not want AMT 130 to go in that direction. And I understand that there is like a chance that things are fucked no matter what, but I want my little sister to have a chance. And like I said, this was 7 months ago. So basically what happened then just happened again. Like, it's weird. Like, it's like I'm watching this video from 7 months ago, but it's entirely fucking relevant. Like entirely, like, creepily relevant, because it just, the same exact thing happened. And we understood the risk of the treatment, the risk of the burr holes in the Huntington's disease community. Most of us, and anyone who didn't, doesn't need to do it, decided that they wanted to take that risk.
Prasad is a smart guy. Despite his faults, biases, and honestly his emotional immaturity, he may have been the smartest major player in Make America Healthy Again, although that is a shockingly low bar to clear. Prasad's departure has left our FDA worse off, not because he was the right person for the position, he wasn't, not remotely, but because his eventual long-term replacement will almost certainly be worse. I suspect the next director of CBER will be someone more anti-vax, more anti-regulation, less pro-science, and ultimately less pro-patient, which nicely summarizes Make America Healthy Again in general.
What I want to make very clear is that nor do I assume that many people in the Huntington's disease community are against regulation with a lot of things, a lot of different drugs. But when you do come in to these rare diseases, and you can critique the trials as much as you want. It's a rare disease. The trials will not be as large scale. Anyway, I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff in this that's ironic. There's a lot of stuff in this that's political. When you go into Big Pharma and how we feel about Big Pharma, like I said, I have things against Big Pharma as well. The bottom line is that the FDA needs to listen to the Huntington's community, and the Huntington's community is, we want the right to try. We as a community understand the risks, and we want a right to try. All all the shareholding stuff, the political stuff, that matter to, it matters to a lot of people, and to some people that's really all that matters. This is a very horrible disease. People who are going to get the treatment know how horrible the disease is, and they understand what they're getting into, or I know we do, and I know my little sister does, and I know other people do, because I've spoken to them. In conclusion, I hope this was both insightful. I hope this was insightful. I hope this was informative, and I hope it can give you some perspective on where we as a family stand, and where a great deal of the HD community stands in ADHD. And there are a lot of people. I know of one person in the Huntington's community who would not get the treatment, and it's okay to not want to do that, and to calculate those risks, and to decide that that's not a risk you want to take. That is totally okay. I want it. I want the opposite to be entirely acceptable as well. And that's really all I have to say. This was about an hour and a half recording, so I hope I'm able to make it a good informative video, and I hope it can maybe change the minds of some people, or maybe give Unicure more leeway. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out, my peeps.